Joining us now is U.S. and International Affairs analyst Calvin Dark, who most recently was elected into the 2019-2020 Fulbright Association National Capital Areas Chapters Board of Directors. This is a order. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the Senate losing its bid to stop this controversial sale?
Well, I think it shows two things. I think one, it shows that unlike other issues in U.S. politics, there's not a clear Democrat-Republican divide when it comes to foreign policy. And because there isn't that clear Democrat or Republican path, it wasn't like this hasn't been making the news around here because a lot of the presidential candidates and members in Congress now haven't talked about where they stood. But now when you look at the vote of them not being able to overturn Trump's veto, it shows that the GOP, which it would require many of them to override it, even when they disagree with President Trump, they're not about standing in the White House's way of what President Trump says he needs to do these deals, to end conflicts, trade wars, and build our relationships in the Middle East.
So this is not the first time that there has been spotlights on the crisis in Yemen. I mean, the blame game goes back and forth about who's responsible on who's responsible for weapons sale, and that whoever is responsible for weapons sale is behind, should also take responsibility for the deaths of civilians in Yemen. But do you think that the U.S. should have distanced itself from this deal, especially with Saudi Arabia, considering the country's human rights violations, most recently that of the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi?
Well, on that second point about Jamal Khashoggi and Washington Post, just like one of the reasons why that incident got such attention here in the U.S. is one, it was horrific, but two, it spotlighted one of President Trump's foils, one of his enemies, being freedom of the press. Just this morning, he claimed that the Washington Post was an agent of Russia, which that has its own sets of issues. But because of the antagonism that Donald Trump has used with the press, that has heightened the profile of what Saudi Arabia did in the Khashoggi case. Now, because of that, there's been pressure on the White House to not cooperate with Saudi Arabia because of their human rights violations. However, no one on the Democratic side has made the case that getting out of this or standing away from this deal will help the United States. No one's articulated how that would happen. And Donald Trump has been saying what most people in this country have been believing, but too afraid to say in past administrations, that we're not the world's police, and that when we stand up for human rights violations or against them, that it doesn't help our bottom line, which is unfortunate, but I think he's articulating what a lot of his supporters feel.
Yeah, I think so too. But let's look at what he said, though the argument he's putting up concerning the weapons sale. He says blocking it would weaken U.S. global competitiveness. How important is it then for the U.S. to sell weapons to, of all the countries, Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think for Donald Trump, it boils down to this simple fact. If he takes a stand against human rights violations against Saudi Arabia, there's doubt. There's a lot of doubt that that could even really change their behavior. But if he can get these arms deals, which can benefit American companies, he gets to be on the campaign trail saying how much he has brought in for U.S. business. Because you got to remember, he's thinking about everything that he's doing from a business standpoint. Now, I think that's unfortunate because I think human rights are valuable even if they don't contribute to your bottom line. But President Trump is thinking about the right now and what he will be given credit for and what he won't. He can see a win on the economic side, but not on trying to be the world's police, as he said the U.S. has done for too long.
Calvin, thanks again for joining us on The World today. And I do look forward to your work with a Fulbright Association later on.
Thank you very much.